Good evening, you're watching the Karan Chronicles, where we make sense of the global events with straight facts and sharp analysis. Tonight, we dive into a global mix of power plays, diplomacy, and deep questions about the identity. First up, Donald Trump calls Jerome Powell a major loser. Is Trump plotting to take control of the US Federal Reserve? Meanwhile, gold hits a record high, markets dip, and Trump's ratings slide. We unpack what's going on in the United States. Then Prime Minister Modi lands in Saudi Arabia, but why is this visit so important? What's on the agenda? And how could it shift India's role in West Asia? We decode the diplomacy. Meanwhile, Putin says he's open to peace talks, but is this a genuine offer or just theater? We examine the signals behind this statement. Also on the show, Hong Kong's oldest pro-democracy party is shutting down. What does this mean for the future of dissent in the city once known for its political vibrance? And finally, after the UK's landmark ruling, New Zealand wants to legally define what it means to be a man or a woman. But why are countries rushing to do this? We will decode. All this is lined up. Let's begin. President Trump has gone on a public tirade against US Fed Chief Jerome Powell, calling him a major loser and demanding that interest rates be cut immediately. And he didn't just say this quietly in a meeting, he posted it on Truth Social, his favorite social media platform. But here is the problem. Trump isn't just giving his opinions. He is putting massive pressure on the Federal Reserve, US Fed, which is supposed to work independently of the politics. And the result? Well, total chaos in the markets. Right after Trump's rant, the stock markets took a nosedive. The Dow Jones, the S&P 500 and Nasdaq, America's top three indices, all fell sharply. Even the US dollar took a big hit, falling to its lowest level in last 3 years. And what did the investors do? They rushed to gold. Gold prices are now at record high. Gold prices surged past $3,400 per ounce, breaking all previous records and confirming what investors fear the most: uncertainty. Why? Because when investors lose faith in the system, they look for safety, and gold is one of the safest places to park your money when everything else feels shaky. In fact, in just 1 month, gold prices jumped nearly 8%, and gold ETFs saw inflow of over 3 billion US dollars according to the World Gold Council. So what's really going on here? Trump wants lower interest rates, which normally help the economy grow. That's the whole demand. But here's the problem, as I mentioned earlier. The Federal Reserve is supposed to be independent, not bullied by the politicians. Investors actually prefer this independence because it means the decisions that will be taken, that are made on the basis of data, not the politics. If Trump forces the Fed to bend, the credibility of entire US economy could be at stake. As the drama unfolds, the real-world consequences are piling up. All over the US, protests have broken out, especially in cities like New York, Washington, D.C., and Chicago. Now, people are accusing Trump of trying to turn America, the United States of America, into a dictatorship by slowly eroding checks and balances implemented in the system. People are angry. They say President Trump is trying to hijack institutions that are supposed to stay independent. A recent poll shows his approval rating has dropped to just 42%, the lowest since he returned to the office. That's a big deal. Even some Republicans are saying enough is enough. But the question is, does this really matter? Well, President Trump still has 4 more years in office. His supporters are strong and he seems unfazed by criticism or the falling ratings or the protests. For now, he's focused on pushing his own economic playbook, whether the markets like it or not. Still, experts warn if the Federal Reserve becomes a political tool, the consequences could be long-term and dangerous and devastating. Imagine a central bank that only does what a politician tells it to do. It might make people happy in the short run, but over the long term, inflation could rise, the economy could crumble, and the global trust in the US economy could vanish overnight. So here we are, a power struggle at the top of America's financial system that is shaking the world economy, and it has just begun. When a world leader is welcomed with a 21-gun salute and escorted into a country by F-15 fighter jets, it's not just diplomacy, it's theater. That's exactly what happened when Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi landed in Jeddah on April 22nd for a two-day state visit to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. This is his third visit to the kingdom after 2016 and 2019, but this one is different, more strategic, more symbolic, and potentially more transformative. Modi's plane was met with the kind of reception usually reserved for the closest of allies. Saudi Crown Prince and Prime Minister Mohammed bin Salman pulled out all the stops, signaling to the world that India-Saudi Arabia relationship is now a top-tier strategic partnership. So why is this visit important? At the heart of this trip is the India-Saudi Arabia Strategic Partnership Council, which Modi will co-chair with MBS Mohammed bin Salman, the leader of the kingdom. This is the second time this high-level meeting is taking place, and it reflects a significant elevation, upliftment of the bilateral ties between two countries. From energy to defense, from space to advanced technology, the agenda is packed and ambitious. But beyond diplomacy, it's the trade and people-to-people ties that anchor this whole relationship. India is Saudi Arabia's second largest trading partner, while Saudi Arabia ranks as India's fourth largest trade partner. In the fiscal year 2022-23 alone, bilateral trade hit $52.75 billion. India imported over $42 billion worth of crude oil and LPG from Saudi Arabia, while exporting some $10.7 billion worth of goods including rice, chemicals, machinery, and India's famous textiles. There is also strategic interest in diversifying the trade basket, the complete basket of trade. The proposed MOUs on space cooperation, clean energy, health, and culture are part of conscious shift away from just the oil and gas to tech-driven, innovation-based collaboration between the two countries. You see, India's tie with the Arabian Peninsula dates back centuries, long before the discovery of even oil. Indian traders were active across the region and cultural exchanges were very frequent. But it was in 2019 when India awarded the Order of Zaid to Crown Prince MBS that the relationship entered a new phase that we see today. Now the legacy continues with 2.7 million Indians living and working in Saudi Arabia, forming the largest expatriate community in the kingdom. Modi is expected to visit a factory employing Indian workers and also engage with Indian diaspora, an important gesture that humanizes any foreign policy. Another key agenda item is Hajj-related cooperation. India has one of the largest Muslim population in the world, and every year tens of thousands of people, Muslim people, travel to Mecca. Modi is expected to discuss increased Hajj quotas and improving the facilities and digital coordination and cooperation for Indian pilgrims. A sensitive yet crucial topic. In his words, Saudi Arabia is one of India's most valued partners, a trusted friend, and a force for stability in the region. This visit is more than symbolic, it's a clear message to the world. India is deepening its ties not just with the West, but also with powerful players in the Gulf. That is India, that is India's diplomacy. And if this trip delivers on even half of the promises, India's presence in the Middle East is about to get a serious upgrade. Let's talk about something unexpected from Moscow. After more than 2 years of war, Russian President Vladimir Putin has for the first time in years said he is open to direct bilateral talks with the Ukraine. Yes, the actual peace talks. This comes right after a short 30 hours Easter truce, which both Russia and Ukraine claim the other side broke. So what's going on here? Let's understand. Well, there is a growing pressure on Putin, President Putin, especially from the Washington by Donald Trump, to at least look like he wants peace. US President Donald Trump has been pushing for a ceasefire and says he can end the war quickly if the both sides come to the table. In response, Putin floated the idea of more ceasefires and even said he is open to discussing a proposal by Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, a 30-day truce to protect civilian areas. But here is the catch. Russia rejected that same idea just last month. So what changed? Putin's comments come during an interview with Russian state television. He was He said Moscow was open to any peace initiative and called the Easter truce, and I quote, a gesture of goodwill. But in the same breath, he also admitted that a recent missile strike did hit a civilian building in Sumy. His justification, well, that the building hosted an event honoring Ukrainian fighters Moscow considers criminal. Meanwhile, Zelensky has not dismissed Putin's remark, but he is staying cautious. He is being cautious. In his evening address, he said Ukraine is ready to talk, but only if Moscow agrees to stop targeting the civilian areas. I'm reading a statement. There is one simple way to do that. He said, stop the drones and missile attacks. Zelensky also made it clear that Ukraine isn't interested in symbolic truces. What's needed is a clear commitment, something that actually protects the lives of people. He stressed that a real ceasefire would involve not just promises, but verified actions, especially when civilian areas continue to get hit. And while all this talking is happening, in the background, the fighting hasn't stopped. Overnight, drone attacks struck the port city of Odessa, injuring 3 and damaging multiple homes. Similar stories continue to emerge from the other region as well. So the question that we are asking is this the beginning of serious peace talks? Maybe, but let's not get ahead of ourselves because both sides have been here before. There have been ceasefires, there have been broken promises, and there have been stalled negotiations. But the fact that Putin is even mentioning bilateral talks again is a shift, and it's worth watching. Ukraine is also heading into fresh peace talks with the US and European leaders in London this week. The main goal is to push for a real, unconditional ceasefire. Let's see when that happens. Imagine a city once alive with protest songs, candlelight vigils, and chants for democracy now falling into silence. After over 30 years, Hong Kong's oldest pro-democratic party is now shutting down. The Democratic Party, once the strongest voice of opposition in the city, is disbanding not because it is losing the support, but because Beijing left it no space to breathe. Yung Sam, a former party chairman, said the message from the officials was loud and clear: disband or face consequences. Fred Lee, another veteran, said a Chinese official told him the party should vanish before year's end, ahead of upcoming elections. You have to understand that this is no fringe group. Understand the background. Formed before the 1997 handover, the Democratic Party once led protests, won elections, and even pushed for universal suffrage peacefully. They were the moderators. They believed the dialogue could solve anything, the dialogue could work, and yet they are today packing up their things. Why? Because since the 2019 pro-democracy protests, Beijing has reshaped Hong Kong's political landscape. A sweeping national security law means even the peaceful dissent can be now treated as a crime. The new electoral system, well, it only allows the patriots. Translation: only pro-Beijing candidates can stand. The Democratic Party tried to adapt, they tried to negotiate, they tried to compromise, even stepped back from protests, but the space kept shrinking and shrinking. Its leaders were jailed, events were cancelled, and 90% of its remaining members have now decided to dissolve. Experts say this isn't just about one party, it's about the city's democratic dream being buried. Professor John Burns from the University of Hong Kong says the party once stood for hope and accountability. Its death marks a shift towards authoritarianism and authoritarian rule. Eric Lai from the Georgetown calls it proof that opposition politics in Hong Kong are no longer possible. The Hong Kong government denies this, saying parties are free to shut down or speak up or as long as they are factual, quote unquote, factual. So how do you speak freely when truth isn't policed? The Democratic Party's fall follows the collapse of nearly 100 civil society groups and the arrest of dozens and dozens of opposition leaders. This is not just a political party fading away, it's an era of democracy. And so, as the Democratic Party quietly disappears, one thing is loud and clear: in today's Hong Kong, even the mildest calls for freedom are now too loud for the state to bear. Imagine you are in a game where the rules have always been clear. Two teams, one ball, one goal each. Suddenly the rules are up for debate. Some wants to redefine what counts as a player, others say the undermines the whole game. That's the heart of today's growing global debate over gender definitions. You heard that right, gender definitions. This week, New Zealand's popularist party, New Zealand First, this is the name of party, introduced a bill that aims to legally define a man as an adult human biological male and a woman as an adult human biological female. The bill isn't coming out of the thin air. It follows closely on the heels of a landmark UK Supreme Court ruling that declared legally recognition of a woman should be based on biological sex, not gender identity. Winston Peters, the party's leader and also New Zealand's Deputy Prime Minister, Deputy PM, said the bill is a pushback against what he calls, and I quote, woke ideology. And again I quote, cancerous society engineering. According to him, this is about restoring common sense, ensuring women's safety and preserving fairness, especially in the areas like sports and access to women-only spaces like bathroom. He mentioned that. But why is this happening now? Simply put, the global pendulum is swinging. It's swinging fast. Over the past decade, many countries have embraced more fluid understanding of genders. Laws were updated, forms became more inclusive, and organizations adopted gender-neutral policies. For progressives, it was a win for inclusivity. For others, especially those who felt left out of this whole gender conversation, it sparked confusion and resentment. Populist Party has now seized this moment. They are framing these gender debates as not just about identity or gender, but about the complete societal order. They argue that blurring gender lines has real-world consequences. Like what? Like undermining women's right, compromising safety in gendered spaces, and, of course, confusing children. They say the law must reflect biological reality. Supporters of such definitions argue women's sports must remain biologically fair to protect the integrity of female competitors. Same-sex spaces exist for safety reasons, especially in the places like that of prisons and shelters. And also children should not be exposed to radical gender ideologies before they are old enough to process them and make their own decisions. But critics say something different. They argue that these bills oversimplify a complex issue, a very complex issue, ignoring the lived realities of transgender people. They focus on lived realities. It is a distraction from more pressing issues like inflation, healthcare, or the housing or the cost of living crisis. It creates a hostile climate for the LGBTQ plus individuals, especially trans youth, who already face higher rates of discrimination and mental health challenges. This is what the critics say. New Zealand's central-left opposition leader Chris Hapkins dismissed the bill as political theatre, saying it's just a headline grab to keep populist party alive. And there is one more twist. The bill wasn't introduced by the government itself, but by an individual MP from the New Zealand First Party. That means there is no guarantee if it will even be debated in the parliament, let alone passed. Still, this isn't just about one law in one country. From the UK to the US and now to the New Zealand, there is a growing pattern, a growing trend of governments and political movements trying to legitimize what it means to be a male or female. For some, it is a return of clarity, but for others, it is a rollback of human rights. But one thing is certain, one thing is clear, defining gender is no longer just a social issue. It has become a political one. And the real question is no longer what a man or woman is, but who gets to decide it. And that's all I have for you on the show tonight, dear viewers. I will see you tomorrow. Until then, take care and good night.